Good evening. This is Professor Joseph Holbrook speaking on international political relations for a Miami-Dade College class called the Introduction to Social Science. We're using Chapter 18 of Hunt and Colander on international political relations. We'll only get through about half of it tonight, and we'll finish the other half next time. So let us begin. So international political relations deals with the state, the concept of the state. And in this sense, we're not talking about the state of Alabama or the state of Mississippi or the state of Florida. We're talking about the international states. A state is an institution empowered to conduct international relations for its citizens. The state is a body politic organized for civil rule and government. It is an independent political unit that can carry on negotiations or make agreements with other such units. The United States, for example, is such a state. All states are not completely sovereign or independent. There's variations in government, culture, and politics. The role of a state as defined by the Charter of the United Nations are, number one, it must have a permanent population, which we do in Florida. Number two, it must have a clearly defined territory, which again we do in Florida. Number three, it must have a government, which we also do in Florida. Number four, it must have sovereignty that requires a capacity for international relations. That we do not have in Florida. That belongs to the federal government. It's the federal government that's negotiating a treaty with Iran, not the state of Florida. So when we speak of states in the United States, it's because of our unique beginning with the 13 colonies that in the very beginning thought of themselves as states, but we eventually became one federated state called the United States. State and nation are terms that can be used interchangeably, although they have slightly different nuances of meaning. Nation originally was defined as a group with shared ethnic and cultural heritage. France and Germany were such states. To be French, one must have grown up with the cultural heritage of France and with the French language. The same with Germany. Other states have multiple languages. Canada has English and French. Russia has multiple languages. Switzerland has at least 3 different languages, German and Italian, and I'm drawing a blank, possibly Spanish. I'm not positive, but certainly German and Italian. The European Union is evolving into a state, a federated state, even though it's composed of many nation states with different languages and different cultural heritages. To think about the word nation, you might think of the Indian nations. The Cherokee Nation has a certain cultural heritage and a certain language, but it's not a modern nation state in the way we understand it. So the nation state originally emerged, the modern idea, in feudal Europe as certain lords came to dominate the others. King Henry II was one such feudal lord in England in the 12th century who began to dominate the state of England. Most of France was unified by the reign of Louis XI in the middle of the 15th century. Then there was Denmark, Spain, Hungary, Russia, and Poland gradually also became unified states at varying rates of speed. And this whole process of the emergence of nation-state was accelerated after the 30 Years' War from 1618 to 1648, which ended with the Treaty of Westphalia. The 30 Years' War was basically a religious war between Catholic principalities and states and Protestant, principally Lutherans in Germany and Sweden. So it put its stamp of approval on a new system that recognized that the authority of the Pope was dead and that each state would be governed by the religious preference of its leader. There are 190 nation-states today in the world. The largest is China with 1.3 billion people. India comes as a close second with 1.1 billion people. The smallest states are Tuvalu with 12,000 people, and Vatican City is the very smallest with under 1,000. So here is a close-up of the map of the eastern half of the eastern hemisphere, or what's called Eurasia and Africa. And you see many, many nation states there, many of which did not exist in the 19th century. States and religion. Some states are overwhelmingly Catholic. For example, Spain, up until about the 1980s, was overwhelmingly Catholic, and still is to some extent today. The book says France. France was at one time very Catholic at the beginning of the 19th century, but France has become a leader in the process of secularization. One might also mention Italy, also Colombia in South America. Colombia was overwhelmingly Catholic until the late 1990s, when the presence of evangelicals began to accelerate or expand. Other states are entirely Protestant, such as Denmark and Sweden, that are both Lutheran. And some states accommodate a variety of faiths. Germany has both Protestant and Catholics, as well as Muslims. The United States has many faiths: Protestant, Catholic, Jewish, Muslim, growing numbers of Hindus and Buddhists as well. Other states are Islamic, Jewish, Hindu, and Buddhist. Saudi Arabia is Sunni Islamic. It's basically a form of very conservative Wahhabism, the same by the way that ISIS has. Iran is also Islamic, but it's Shiite, a different brand of a different stream of Islam. Turkey is Muslim. Israel is Jewish. India is Hindu. Thailand and Myanmar are Buddhist. And Cuba and China are entirely secular, communist. Once upon a time, the international system was dominated by empires. An empire is a collection of states under the central dominance of one state, a monarchy, or a religious system. One example would be the Holy Roman Empire, which was in Central Europe, primarily German-speaking Europe. There was also the Spanish and Portuguese empires. The Portuguese Empire is very interesting because it led out early with ocean-going navigation, and the Portuguese went south around the Horn of Africa, and to India, whereas the Spanish went west to Dominican Republic, Haiti, Cuba, on to Mexico and Peru. The Russian Empire went east across the steppes of Siberia and basically became one of the largest empires, covering most of the landmass of Eurasia. The Ottoman Empire was centered in Turkey and came to rival the eastern half of the Roman Empire, and as it was an Islamic empire. And the British Empire, particularly in the 19th century, spanned the globe and became important up through World War II. Here's a picture of the Ottoman Empire under Solomon I the Magnificent in 1580. As you see, most of North Africa, the Middle East, and a good bit of Greece and the Balkans came under the rule of the Ottomans, basically equivalent to the eastern half of the Roman Empire, which formerly was called the Byzantine Empire. Then this is the Hispanic Peninsula, Hispania, or I'm sorry, the Iberian Peninsula, and two empires came out of this peninsula. One was out of Little Portugal and spanned the globe in a trading empire that included Brazil, Angola, Mozambique, and numerous trading outposts in India and the Spice Islands. Then the Spanish Empire basically covered half of South America and most of North America and Central America. At one point, most of what is the modern United States and a good bit of Canada belonged to Spain. Then tiny Holland. Poor Holland is overlooked in history. I think the Holland and the Dutch Republic should get far more credit in history for the early beginnings of republicanism and for their empire, which basically followed the Portuguese around the globe and also in a set of trading posts. And for about 40 years, they had sugar-producing parts of Brazil that they took over, as well as New Amsterdam in the 13 colonies, which now is known as New York. The establishment and disappearance of states. Since 1648, new nation-states have sprung into being, and some old ones have died out. Change occurred in the Western Hemisphere in the 1800s, particularly in the former empires of Spain and Portugal. 20 new states were formed from Spain and Portugal in the New World during the Napoleonic Wars. Basically, as a result of Napoleon taking over the throne of Spain and removing the Spanish king, causing a revolt by the Spanish, which then reverberated into the colonies and eventually issued in the new republics, the new nation states, such as Mexico, Cuba, Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Chile, Argentina, and in the Portuguese Empire case, Brazil. These were early forerunners of the modern nation-state system, and all were new republics, or not necessarily republics, some were monarchies, but all were new nation-states around 1821 through, in the case of Cuba, 1902. World War I tore down the old multinational empires of Austria-Hungary and also the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire, and it built up several new states: the Poland, Czechoslovakia, Austria, Hungary, Latvia, and Lithuania, and Estonia. Not to mention a number of new states in the Middle East that came out of the Ottoman Empire. Greece actually won its independence from the Ottomans in 1821, about the same time that states such as Colombia and Argentina were getting their independence from Spain. World War II brought further changes. It snuffed out Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, which became part of the former Soviet Union. But it also saw the establishment of Israel, the first Jewish state, and the division of Korea and Germany. So this shows a map of empires in 1911, just prior to the World War I. You see France and Germany. You see the Austro-Hungarian Empire. You also see the Russian Empire. And down here in blue is the Ottoman Empire. World War I was hard on empires. All three of these empires basically broke up as a result of World War I. The European Union began in the early beginnings of 1951 with Belgium, West Germany, France, Italy, and the Netherlands began to form a customs union. In 1992, the European Union adopted a common currency called the euro. In 2004, the European Union expanded and included Greece, Spain, Portugal, Austria, Finland, and Sweden, although they may feel some buyer's remorse right now about including Greece, who's about ready to go bankrupt. So here's a map of the European Union. This is the older members of the European Union. Some of the newer members that were added, you see Poland and Hungary here on the eastern side, Central Europe. And then more recently, Bulgaria and Romania. And Turkey is hopeful to eventually join the European Union, but some issues need to be addressed, such as Turkey's denial of the responsibility for the Armenian Holocaust, or the Armenian genocide, which the Pope actually spoke out on today on the 100th anniversary of the beginning of the Armenian genocide. So that is, I forgot about Africa. So here is a map of colonial Africa. During the 19th century, the European powers carved Africa up into colonial possessions. This map is a little hard to follow, but you can see that there are some. Libya was under Italian influence, as well as Somalia. Germany was in charge of a number of territories, but particularly German Southwest Africa, which is where the actual first genocide of the 20th century occurred in 1901 against the